Hey, Blue Table fans, Spencer here with part 2 of our United Colonies of Mankind tips and tactics videos for Drop Zone Commander. Today we'll be talking about the UCM's main force of firepower, which is tanks. UCM do not have anything like walkers, they just have a lot of tanks. And I've thrown in the Scimitar tank destroyer just because it fits. So this is the current available selection of tanks to the UCM. You have the two new light tanks, the Katana and the Fireblade. You have the Saber main battle tank, the Rapier anti-aircraft tank, the Gladius heavy battle tank, and the Scimitar tank destroyer. These all are fairly different units. They all have their own thing that they do. But the main thing on these three is that they have the articulated rule. So their guns, you'll notice, are on these arms, basically. It's a little harder to see it on this guy, but it is. And what that does is it allows them to raise their gun over low obstacles. So anything lower than an inch, they can pop their gun up over it and shoot, which means they can stay behind cover and be harder to hit and harder to see, while still being able to just sort of peek their guns over and shoot their opponents. Everything here, with the exception of the Scimitar, also has a turret, so it has a 360-degree range of fire, as far as I can tell. So UCM tanks have a lot of versatility because they have a lot of different designs, but each one specializes in a certain thing. So you do kind of need to mix and match. So let's get in more detail, and let's start with the new light tanks, starting with the Katana. Alright, so this is the new UCM light tank, the Katana. This is a little tank with some cannons on it. It's not nothing super special. So stat-wise, they're armor 9, which for a light tank, quote-unquote, is pretty impressive. I would expect them to be like armor 7-ish because they're light tanks, but UCM tanks are known for being pretty resilient. They have a move of 6, active countermeasures, 1 damage point. They're 30 points apiece. They come in a squad of 3 models. You can take them in squads of 3, 6, or 9 with standard cohesion. They are a standard category selection, so you're going to be able to fit quite a few of these into a list pretty easily. And they have a special rule called Smoke Launcher. And what this does is, if no models in the squad shoot, they can use their smoke launchers, where weapons fired against them suffer a +2 to accuracy until the squad's next activation. Using smoke launchers does not count as shooting, which is a bit weird because it says when no units in the squad shoot. So I don't know if you can shoot smoke and then shoot your cannons. Speaking of which, their primary weapon is their twin cannon that you see here. When I first saw these, I thought it was going to be a laser gun. Apparently it's a smoothbore cannon of some type. Energy 9, you get 2 shots, 2+ accuracy, a 48-inch free range, but an 18-inch countered range. So shooting at stuff with countermeasures, i.e. any vehicle, they lose a lot of range. They have a move and fire 6, so they can still move their full movement and shoot. And they have a turret, so like I said, you get front, side, and rear, so they can shoot 360. These guys, I've never used these in the game. In fact, I've never even played against these, but these seem like really cool little tanks because you're getting 2 energy 9 shots per a tank. So you run these in a squad of 9 tanks, and they're 30 points apiece. So you're not paying a whole lot of points for 9 of these. A decent amount less than you pay for 9 Tomahawks. Or even 9 Sabers. So they're disadvantage is their armor's a little bit lower than a Saber. I think a Saber is armor 10, so they're 1 point of armor lower, which doesn't sound like much, but it can make a pretty big difference in this game. But movement 6 is respectable. It lets them get around pretty well, and their guns are actually pretty good. So you could send out a squad of 9 of these guys and be able to do some serious damage and be able to present a pretty legitimate threat. Because Energy 9 is going to be able to pierce some armor for most main battle tanks and even some heavy tanks. Now, I wouldn't rely on spamming multiple units of 9. 1 unit of 9 or maybe 2 units of 6 would be good build if you want more light tanks as opposed to main battle tanks. But like I said, you're going to lose that 1 point of armor. However, they make up for it with their smoke launchers because, man, that's just crazy. Because suddenly you go from, say, if you need a 2 up to hit, you now need a 4 up to hit, which has just exponentially made it more difficult for your opponent to kill your stuff. So these guys are really cool. Like I said, you can fit a lot of them into a squad and into a army. So I would run them in either one big squad of 9 or try and fit in 2 squads of 6 if you can. The main thing though is you want to be careful that you don't spend too much points on these guys and eat into your anti-aircraft points, because you're going to want rapiers. But the Katanas were not the only light tank UCM got. They also got the Fireblade. This is very similar to the Katana stat-wise. In fact, they're pretty much identical. The only difference is these guys are 32 points a model, and they take up a support slot instead of a standard slot. They do have the smoke launcher rule, so they have that going for them. These are very specialized anti-infantry tanks because they're armed with, as you might guess from their name, just looking at the models, a flamethrower. It's energy force, 6 shots, 3 up accuracy, 6 inch range, whether it be free, countered, move and fire 6. It's on a turret. And what flame weapons do in this game is they ignore soft and body cover. So basically, any cover infantry you're getting, these ignore. They can't shoot at infantry that are in a building where you have guys or infantry that are currently engaged in a close quarter battle. But if your opponent shoots out of a building, these are going to be awesome. So you find yourself in this situation. You've got an opponent with some infantry sitting up in this building, and in this case you have Gauss rifle armed Shaltari Braves who are shooting out and taking pot shots at your heavier tanks. So what you do is you roll up a couple of these guys and you flame that building. So now these guys aren't getting any soft or body cover. They'll still, as far as I know, get their warsuit saves, but you're getting 18 dice thrown at them. So even Shaltari infantry are going to fall to 18 dice. It's just a lot of attacks. And your Fireblades are going to be a little susceptible because these guys do have energy 8 weapons and they're only armor 9. But your opponent's still going to have a harder time killing you than you are them. This is really good also for clearing infantry. So say if these were firstborns, just camping on an objective and waiting for you to try and charge them, in this scenario, you still have the upper hand because you can now roll up, flamethrower them. And mind you, if these were firstborns, they have no ranged weapon. They have no way of shooting these. So you roll up, flame these, kill them, fly in a Raven, boop, land that, put your own infantry in there, and now you have the objective. So it takes a lot of synergy and a lot of kind of getting units to work together, but these are awesome at clearing infantry out of a building that are causing you major problems. So yeah, Fireblades are excellent at clearing out infantry. Where they fall short is fighting against other tanks, because their flamethrowers are only energy 4, so they're not going to do much damage to enemy tanks. They might be able to ding some APCs, but really these are dedicated anti-infantry unit. Like the Katana, they're only 1 damage point, but they are armor 9, which is very respectable for a quote-unquote light tank. So they have some survivability, but if you have these on the table, like not in a dropship, but just rolling around, movement of 6 is good, but your opponent is going to gun for them, because these are going to clear infantry out of buildings, and they're going to keep your opponent off objectives. So you have to be careful. You really want to protect these guys if you want to use them to their maximum efficiency, really. So let's move on to the main battle tank of the UCM. This is the Saber. This is the UCM main battle tank, and it is the tank you will most likely see more often than not if you're playing against UCM. And more often than not, you'll field a bunch of these if you're playing UCM, because you get a bunch of them. If you buy starter boxes, you get like 3 per starter box. You get a squad. So stat-wise, Saber is armor 10, a movement of 4, countermeasures active, 1 damage point, 37 points a model. Their standard category. Their squad size is 3, 6, or 9 with a standard coherency. What these guys do well is hunting tanks. They are very much anti-tank units, but they do have an anti-infantry weapon. Their main weapon is an Avenger railgun, energy 10, 1 shot, 2 up accuracy, infinite free range, 24-inch countered, move and fire 4 on turret, so front, side, and rear arc, and has the articulated rule that I mentioned earlier. So it's a very hard-hitting, and 24-inch range is actually really good. So these things hit hard, but they don't throw out a lot of volume of fire, which is where running them in bigger squads really comes in handy. They do have an anti-infantry weapon, in that they have a heavy machine gun. Energy 4, it's only 2 shots, 3 up accuracy, 36-inch free range, 12-inch counter, move and fire 4, front and side arc. No special rules on that. So they can gun down infantry if you need them to, but they don't throw out a lot of dice compared to like Fireblade. Sabers are the main battle tanks, so they're pretty much what you expect. They roll around with railguns and they shoot stuff. Like I said, the main advantage these guys have is that their railguns are not only on a turret, but they're articulated. So these guys can pop them up from behind cover and shoot. They're not as fast as the light tanks, but they do have 1 more point of armor, as I said earlier. So these guys aren't going to get around as fast, but they are going to be a tiny bit more survivable. The big thing for these is, much like the Tomahawk, which is their comparison for the Shaltari, which I'm referencing just because it's the first round of videos we did. They're comparable to a Tomahawk in that you want to run them in more than squads of 3. You have multiple squads of 3 running around, but 3 of them are not going to survive super long against concentrated fire. Having them in a squad of 6 or a squad of 9 really does work. I wouldn't say run them in more than 1 squad of 9 or even of 6. 1 squad of these guys is going to do you fine, especially now with the Katanas, because you can get them for less points and you run them in a big squad of 9 and actually get more shots out of them. A slightly weaker shot mind with a shorter range, but more shots nonetheless. So these, it almost feels like these have been relegated to sort of a support role for the Katana, where they roll up and they take on slightly heavier stuff the Katana might have trouble with, or act as a screen for them. But these are your main battle tanks, so you don't have to run them as a screen. It's just one tactic that I might consider using if I were you, the viewer. Yeah, so a very straightforward tank. Everything in UCM is very straightforward because it's all very specialized. They don't have anything like Shaltari War Striders. They're just bristling with guns and have so many options on how you can use them. But these guys, what they're best at is finding enemy tanks and taking them out. So there is another UCM tank built on this same chassis, and that would be the Rapier anti-aircraft tank. These guys are armed with a turret and articulated arm-mounted Gatling cannon, which is pretty awesome. Stat-wise, they're pretty much the same to a Saber, armor 10, movement 4, active countermeasures, 1 damage point, no special rules. They are 45 points a model, so they're more expensive. They take a support slot, like pretty much every dedicated AA unit. They can only be run in squads of 3 with a wide coherency. So they can be further apart, but you can't have as many. Their big advantage is going to be their Vindicator cannon. It is pretty ridiculous. So there's 2 different ways it can fire. It can fire in focus pattern or wide pattern. Focus pattern is energy 7, 3 shots, 3 up accuracy, infinite free range, 18-inch countered range, move and fire 4, turrets, front, side, and rear arcs, alternate 1, articulated, anti-aircraft. That is what you're going to be using to shoot down enemy aircraft and enemy skimmers, because these are going to take out skimmer tanks because they won't suffer the penalty for doing so. Your other option is the wide pattern, which is good for taking out infantry. Energy 4, but you get 8 shots, 3 up accuracy, 24-inch free range, 12-inch counter, and then 4-inch boom fire, turret, alternate 1, articulated. Doesn't have AA. So these actually have a lot of versatility just in their main gun for either shooting down enemy aircraft or skimmers, but they can also shoot infantry that are in a building. So you're going to get a little more versatility out of these than you might expect. And they likewise have the same heavy machine gun that the Saber has. So these can actually throw out a lot of anti-infantry fire because you can get 10 shots per guy technically. But like I said, their main role is going to be shooting down enemy aircraft and enemy skimmers. So Shaltari and Scourge are going to be gunning for these guys because they'll ignore their skimmer tank rule, which will make them a little more vulnerable. And really, there isn't much else to say. Like I said, if you have an enemy camping in a building and you can't get like a Fireblade squad over to them and you have a squad of Rapiers nearby, yeah, wide pattern that building. Just throw a ton of dice at it. You can get 30 shots off between these 3 tanks. So the Rapier ends up being a lot more versatile than most AA tanks in that it has that very specific anti-infantry capability to it. Now, the UCM does have one more type of tank, which is their heavy battle tank. These bad boys right here are Gladius heavy battle tanks, and they are some of my favorite looking models in the game, and definitely in the UCM line. Stat-wise, they're armor 10, movement of 3, so they're very, very slow. Active countermeasures, 2 damage points each, 59 points a model. They take up a heavy slot. They can run in squads of either 2, 4, or 6 models with a standard cohesion. And being able to run these in squads of 6 is absolutely silly because of their gun. They have a turret-mounted twin Avenger railguns. So it's the same railgun basically that the Saber has. So it's energy 10, but you get 2 shots because you have 2 of them. Accuracy 2+, infinite free range, 24-inch countered range, move and fire 3 with articulated. So it still has the articulated turret that can go up and down. You can see a little better on that guy. And shoot 360. And they get 2 shots each. So mine, you can now run 6 of these six heavy battle tanks with railguns, each of them throwing out 2 rounds of fire each. That's ridiculous. That is crazy amount of firepower coming out of just 6 tanks. You're getting 12 shots in a maximum size squad of these. Mind you, they're 59 points a model, so that eats a lot of points to do it, but man, that would be a very intimidating unit to see on the other side of the battlefield, because look, I'm going to say, as a Scimitar player, seeing 2 of these roll down the street is pretty threatening. I couldn't imagine seeing 6 of them roll up at the same time. At that point, I'm definitely in the wrong neighborhood, because they're going to lay waste to pretty much anything they see. They're tank hunters. They're going to take out enemy heavies. So heavy tanks, Scimitar War Striders, crumble to these things almost. Especially if you're running them in a squad of 6. Now, I would say they probably work best in squads of 2 or 4. They are a heavy choice, so they're a little trickier to fit into every army. And they're going to eat up a lot of points if you want to run a big squad of them. But running 4 of them is a completely viable tactic, because even 4 of these, I mean, you're getting 8 energy 10 shots out of them. It's not as many as in a full squad of Sabers, but it's still just as threatening, because it's only 1 shot less. And each of them is 2 damage points, so even 4 of them in a squad, that's 8 damage points you have to do to that squad to kill all of them. So you got 8 energy 10 shots. If you do them in a squad of 16, that's 12 damage points you have to throw at a single unit of tanks to get rid of them, which is frankly just a little silly. So yeah, the Gladius is a really awesome tank, and it's a big threat to anything that isn't a skimmer. So UCM players, take some Gladiuses, Gladii, whatever, and just control a chunk of the table with them, because they're going to be hard to take out. And armor 10's pretty hard to take down. 2 damage points each. You're going to be able to control a chunk of the board, keep your opponent from getting anywhere they want to go. So the UCM have one more quote-unquote tank. It's actually a tank destroyer. And lastly, we get to my favorite of the UCM tanks. This is the Scimitar Tank Destroyer. These guys are crazy cool. For starters, I'm absolutely in love with this model. It's a giant laser cannon mounted on some treads, and I absolutely love it. So the Scimitar stats: armor 10, movement of 3, active countermeasure, 2 damage points, very similar to the Gladius. They're 50 points apiece, so they're a little cheaper. They also take a heavy slot, so they're going to be fighting with the Gladius for space in your list. They can run in squads of either 2 models or 4 models. Standard cohesion, no special rules. So what these guys excel at, as their name might imply, is killing vehicles. They have a marksman laser, which is their giant laser cannon. Energy 10, 1 shot, accuracy of 2, infinite range, free or countered. Which means these can shoot clear across the table regardless of what your opponent's countermeasures are. But here's its major disadvantage: it's move and fire 0. So this is basically a tank version of the Scimitar Ocelot with slightly weaker gun and not on a turret. So this only has a front-facing weapon. That's kind of its disadvantage. It's very limited arc of fire, and it can't move and shoot in the same turn. But here's where it gets good. It has the special rule Marksman's Touch. Essentially, what this does is when you shoot and you hit something, a roll of 6 when you roll to hit. Not damage, rolling to hit. just to hit your opponent, automatically does 2 damage points. You don't have to roll for damage. If you roll 6 to hit, automatically 2 damage points. So you can have 4 of these in a squad, get off 4 energy 10 infinite range shots that can do 2 damage points. If you roll ridiculously well, you can drop a War Strider in a single turn. That's bananas. These things are awesome at what they do. They're basically future Stoogs. And I love them. They're so cool. They're very specialist and they're very limited in what they do because they have to sit still to shoot and they can always shoot to the front. But man, when they hit something hard. They're not going to do well against skimmers because they're going to be hitting on a 4+ instead of a 2+. But against, say, PHR walkers, they're going to be a nuisance. They're going to cause a lot of problems. If you run a squad of 4 of these, and like I said, you roll ridiculously well, and all of them get a 6 to hit, you can drop a Hades, big, mean PHR Scorpion walker. You can drop one of those in a single shot. That's crazy, because a Hades is like 280 points. So it'd be roughly equal points, because 4 of these is 200 points for a squadron, but still, that's insane to have one squad of 4 tanks drop something like a Hades in a single salvo. Mind, it does take ridiculously good rolling on your part. But, you know, we've seen crazy stuff happen. We're all war gamers. We've all seen that guy who somehow rolls all 6s on a single attack. So don't bank on them doing that, but they can. They have the potential. But they are very good at what they do. They're very slow, but they do manage to do their job. You park them in a section with a good, clean line of fire, like I said, with infinite range, on a 4-foot board, you park them right, you've got 4 feet of firing lane for these things to just shut down. They also have the UM5 Gatling gun, like on the drop ships, for a little anti-infantry firepower, energy 3, 4 shots, 3 up accuracy, 24-inch free, 12-inch counter, moving fire 3, and the machine gun on this guy is actually 360 front, side, and rear. So, but that's not what you're using them for. You're using them to hunt tanks. That's what they're going to excel at. Whether you should run them in the squad of 2 or 4 is really up to you. I would recommend at least having a squadron of 2 available to you. If you can run a squadron of 4, like you can fit it into your points and still fit in everything else you want, give it a try. It's going to be a serious threat to anything that comes up, because you could do stuff like this. Now mind, we only have 2 of them, but if you had 4, you can have one facing in every direction and essentially shut down a complete 4-way intersection with just brutal, horrible killiness. So yeah, scimitars are awesome, and I really, really recommend getting some. So there you have it, folks, UCM tanks. I know this video ran a little long for tips and tactics, but that is because there are 6 different tanks to talk about here. So what do I recommend? Well, you're going to have Sabers no matter what. They're included in all the starter boxes. You're going to get a couple of Rapiers in them too. But expanding from there, Gladius tanks are awesome. They're hard-hitting, they take quite a beating to kill, and they're going to drop most heavy enemy units. Scimitars are just stupid amounts of fun, so I recommend picking up at least a blister of 2 of those. As for the light tanks, they're very specialized. So if you're looking for more anti-tank power, grab some katanas. Run a squad of 9 or run 2 squads of 6, whatever you can afford to fit in a list. If your opponent's bringing a lot of infantry, like say there's Scourge and there's going to be a lot of Razor Worms running around, Fireblades. They're not going to do much against enemy tanks, but keep them well protected with stuff like Sabers or even with Katanas, and they'll do you well. So really everything has its purpose, everything has its job, and it really just depends on your play style and how you want to do things. If you're looking for a lot of anti-tank capabilities, like your opponent's playing PHR, yeah, you can basically ignore this, and you can kind of ignore this, but you're going to need some for anti-air. But these are going to be your main fighters in that particular fight. So yeah, that does it for this little rundown of the UCM tanks. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in getting a Drop Zone Commander army, or an army for any other game for that matter, painted up through Blue Table Painting, please send us an email at projects@bluetablepainting.com. You'll talk to Steve, he'll get you prices, he'll get you hooked up, he'll take care of you, and we can get you an awesome looking army. So be sure to stay tuned for part 3 of our UCM tips and tactics, where we will be talking about UCM aircraft. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next part.